Welcome to the Christian Business Leader Podcast, where Christ-following business leaders explore God's will and ways for business. This show is a ministry of the Center for Christianity and Business at Houston Christian University and features conversations with today's Christ-centered business leaders who are representing Christ faithfully in the business world. I'm your host, Darren Shear, and if you want to make your work, leadership, and company's culture more Christ-centered, you've come to the right place. On this episode, we're joined by Stefanie Gass. Stefanie is a Christian business and podcast coach, boy mom. I got one of those. Oh. Yeah, we got 3 boys. How many boys do you have?
2.
2. Awesome.
Yep.
How fun. And 7-figure CEO, if being a boy mom wasn't enough. She helps women grow their online businesses, and she's probably going to help some men here today too, and make consistent income using podcasting. She's the host of a top 20 globally ranked business podcast called Online Business for Christian Women. She believes it's possible to partner with God to create income and impact without sacrificing your family faith or buying into the social media hustle. Stefanie, welcome to the Christian Business Leader Podcast.
Well, hello. Thanks for having me, Darren. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So when did you first realize God wants to be involved in your work and business?
Well, honestly, it was after I had built a business my way and the world's way. And to make a very long story moderately short, I got laid off of corporate about 17 years ago and had this crossroad of like, am I going to build a business myself? Am I going to go back to corporate? I ended up choosing the entrepreneur route and built that 100% in my own strength. I was saved at 9 years old, but was not in relationship with Jesus at all. And so this looked like striving, hustle, phone addiction, doing anything and everything to make it, which I did. And then everything, of course, when we build on quicksand, it falls away. And that's exactly what happened. It was about 2016, 2017, and my entire business crumbled. And I was really left with the most broken version of myself. We had borrowed money from my son's savings account to pay the mortgage. I was struggling with alcohol and different addiction. And how am I going to get out of this? I had this new baby, and I really went and found this corner of my house and had my, bathroom floor moment. I think so many people have had that. And I just completely surrendered. And I said, Lord, I have no idea what I'm called to do, but now I have failed in business. The only identity I ever wore that really felt like it was meaningful and that success was such an identity for me. And I need you to just be partnered with me. And it was that moment that I made that decision to really turn not just one piece of my life to him. As I had been feeling the tug and kind of dancing around, it was like, I'm just done. Like, I cannot do this anymore. And that was in 2016, 17, that was that moment.
Mm. And so was that the same moment of this prophetic dream? Was that kind of how the dream unfolded, or was this a separate experience?
So that was a separate experience. Okay. So after that moment, in the bathroom floor moment, I started journaling in that same hour that I was sitting there just crying, because at this point, everyone knows I've failed. And it was just such a big identity for me of I'm this big successful. It was in network marketing at the time. And it was just everything that I thought my worth was coming from. And so it was completely stripped away. And all of the little coping mechanisms that I had been using were also being revealed as harmful. This is stealing from my kids, stealing from my marriage, stealing from me. My health is the worst it's ever been. And so I start journaling in this notebook, Darren, and the Holy Spirit literally starts just speaking through the pen. And it's, you're a kingdom business owner. You are sober. You're a present wife. You're an intentional mom. These are not words I used. I had not even opened a Bible, probably ever. I didn't really understand what it meant to have a constant prayer life. And so I'm looking at this paper, I don't know what any of this means. And the crazy part is I just took that paper and I started to ask God, what am I supposed to do with this paper? And the first thing that came up was you're going to get healthy. And so I just circled that one because I'm like, he's trying to give me this blueprint of some kind. This is some kind of like visual of the woman that he sees me as. How does God see me? And so I started doing one thing at a time that was kind of on that paper. And I started to see my life shift and change. And I felt the Lord leading to kind of get back into business in some way because I've just always been a leader in business. I've been good at, I knew I was good at building a business because I had done it. I knew I was good at marketing and connecting with people. And so I started to try to do it with God, but was stumbling all around because I wasn't hearing from him with the exact thing to do, which is usually how God likes to work. It's like, I'll give you the first step and then let's kind of messily figure this out together. So I was on Instagram 4 to 5 hours a day trying to build this business with God, but my discernment alarms kept going off. Like as I was chasing God in the word, praying, like, how am I supposed to build the business, God? How am I supposed to reach these, at the time, these women who are wanting to build their own business? Every time I'd open the app, like I would just feel the Holy Spirit, like, nope. And so I just kept pushing through I tried blogging, nothing was working, YouTubing. I would get one lead a month. And it's like, this is not working, God. Like, I don't understand how I'm supposed to do this. But I just kept praying. I just kept trying, and door would close and door would close. And then it was about that year and a half later, and I had a prophetic dream. It was October of 2018. And I've only had a few of those that are super vivid. You know, it's a word. I sat straight up in bed because I had heard and seen start a podcast very clearly. And I knew it was from God. And I didn't listen to podcasts. It's not something I was considering. I had no idea how that was going to help me build a business whatsoever and reach people. I just had no idea. But I knew I had to do what God said. So that day, same day, I plugged in a microphone I already had. It was staticky. It was awful. I built my own podcast art in Canva. Do not recommend. And I started talking about random stuff, and I launched this podcast. And it was pretty incredible how God used that and kind of the journey that happened from there. But I'll pause and see if you have anything you want to say to that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, 2017 podcast, I mean, this is not exactly the early days of podcasting when it's easy to get in new and noteworthy and, chart on iTunes and all that. But you just jumped in there. And so did you start off kind of doing podcast coaching? I mean, probably not, right? Because you were
Right.
brand new. I mean, some people start out that way. It's like, what better way to get into podcasting than teach other people podcasting? I mean, what was the path for you?
I think it's really interesting because when I started the podcast, Darren, I was still so confused. I hadn't heard from God, like, this is what you do. This is what all I heard was start a podcast. I'm like, great, God, what am I talking about? So I did what God said, but I didn't have the outcome. And I think that's such a critical thing for every single kingdom business owner to really consider is we will never see this big outcome of what the action is God is asking us to do, because that's what that faith really is built on. That trust is knowing he's going somewhere with this, but you don't need to understand it, nor could I. I could never have looked at where I sit today and been like, that sounds great. I would have been terrified. I probably wouldn't have started the podcast at all. So I start this show, and like you just said, it shouldn't have made it. I had bad art. My title was bad. I didn't understand podcast SEO and all these things that strategically make a podcast work. Nothing should have made sense. And it wasn't even clear what I was talking about. But because it was what God had asked me to do, things started to really move quickly. The door was open, and it was like I was just going through this really quick acceleration of getting to where he wanted me to be. I think just through the obedience of starting it. And so I laid down social media almost around the exact same time, which again made no sense because that was the only place I was getting my couple of clients. But I laid it down. I started on weekends. It went to a month. The podcast saw huge downloads that month. And I knew, like, God's confirming I'm supposed to stay off of socials because it was kind of perpetuating that addictive tendencies. I was trying to heal my life and get better at not being so addicted to my phone and to the apps and to all these things. And that became 6 months. And over that 6 months, my few people that were listening to the show just started exponentially increasing. I
Mm.
started getting all these hours back because I wasn't on social media anymore. So I started doing 2 episodes a week. And then I would do a bonus one. And I was just pouring all of my heart and intentionality into the show. And the clients started to just pour into my inbox. I didn't have a website. I had nothing that should have made sense, but they were asking me, do you coach? So that's how I was like, oh, I guess this is what I do because the people told me, do you coach? And I looked at the Lord and I'm like, do we coach? And the Lord's like, yes, you do. And I said, great. Yes, I coach. What do you want to talk about? So I started getting on these calls, Darren, and these women just needed clarity. They had no idea what they should do. What should my business be? I feel a tug from the Lord. Like I have all this idea, I have all this stuff. And I just was able to take this mess that they couldn't see through and be like, oh yeah, 100%. Like you're going to be a marriage restoration coach for people who've gone through an affair.
Mm.
And like, we could call it this. And this is exactly how you can build it. They would leave these calls crying. Like, I've been trying to figure this out for 5 years. How can you just tell me that? And I didn't really know. I just knew that I showed up in these calls and I was able to help them drill through the mess to get specifically to the outcome of what they needed. So I became a clarity coach and they called it that. So I was like, great, your customer is your greatest copywriter. And they told me this is clarity coaching. So that went on for a few years and it became extremely successful to the point where I couldn't even coach anymore. And I had to then move to the next level, which was them asking me, how do I start a podcast and build these listeners the way you have? So that naturally became the next thing I was teaching them was how to start a podcast. And then that last thing was born about a year later, which was how to monetize the podcast so that we could really partner with God in making money, because money was such a taboo thing for a lot of these women. They struggled so much with the mindset around money, with accepting that, God created money. And if everything is his anyway, let's show up in that and let's use it for great things. And so really empowering them to understand that it was okay to earn money, that we could work with God's will in our work in that way. And then how do we create something that would really better other people's lives through our podcast? So it was kind of an ascension of listening to my people that were coming to the show.
Yeah. I love the attitude and the moment when you turn to the Lord and people are asking you if you coach, and you turn to the Lord and say, do we coach? And I mean, that's such a powerful statement, because it's not, do I coach, or it's, do we coach? Because if you're going to partner with God in your life and really anything you do, and he wants to be involved in even the most intimate details of our life, it's we, and it's going to the Lord and asking, is this what we do? Is this what we're going to do together? Because there's all sorts of things that we try to do on our own, and we've seen that movie. We know how that plays out. So, and you've worked with so many Christian women, Christian entrepreneurs. When you're helping them to have that own moment, their own moment with the Lord, and ask, do we coach? Do we teach? Do we renovate houses? Do we make jewelry? What are some of those businesses that have come out of those conversations that some of your clients have had?
It's so cool. It's so, to me, like the funnest thing is being able to see somebody use something that has always been their gifting, or maybe was a trial in their life. And God now is taking that thing and it's this big redemption story for them. And they're either helping other people with it, or they're just bringing it to the world. I have one that pops in my mind. Her name is Teresa Davis, and she actually lost a child. And going through that obviously was the greatest pain of her life. And she came into the program saying, I want to help other moms with this. And we ended up building the Grief Mentor, which is now a top podcast as well, that's helped hundreds of other moms who have gone through that. So that's like some of the ones that come out of it. I have people who, like, Broken Vows is a podcast where their marriage was on the rocks due to infidelity, and now they're helping other marriages be restored. So we have podcasts like that are like absolutely shaking the kingdom. And we also have podcasts where people are helping someone like a postpartum mom with fat loss because that mom can't seem to get back to treating her body like a temple. And that's shaking the kingdom too. And it's something that's more tactical and more strategic, but God has each of us uniquely placed in these perfect little pockets all over the world in every single segment, whether it's ministry or marketplace, but it's all synergistically working together to ultimately lead more people back to him, which is amazing, but also having us experience him in each and every part of our life, right? Whether it's our health, whether it's this huge momentous loss or diagnosis, or even those small little things. So I've seen businesses like up, down, sideways, like every single thing you could think of. Those are a few that come to mind. I even have, students who have been blind and they've started podcasts, and it's just like literally so cool. It's crazy.
Wow. So on this show, and I think you believe this as well, we believe that the primary purpose of business is not primarily to make a profit or just to make money to donate to Christian ministries, but to make disciples of Jesus Christ, because for-profit businesses are the primary places where this is going to happen. So can you give us an example of how disciple making has happened through your company?
Yeah, it's so cool. There's firsthand accounts, for example, like somebody I'm a business coach. I definitely had an identity crisis for a minute of like, am I like a mini preacher with the business coach flair? But it was like, Steph, you're a business coach through and through. Obviously, I really have a deep, deep emphasis in partnering with God in business creation. But people would come to, let's say, one of my boot camps or something like that. And we'd get an email after saying, oh my goodness, I came thinking I wanted to make money from home, and I left being completely convicted. We've had people come to the Lord, pray to Jesus for the first time, and like have an actual moment where they've been evangelized without even that being the intention. So we have firsthand accounts like that. But there are also, because other people are starting podcasts and being the hands and feet of Christ, now there's a ripple effect where we have hundreds of people who are believers using their voice in whatever capacity their vocation is. They're creating disciples. And they say the same thing to me, going, I don't even brand my podcast with Christianity. It has nothing to do with God or Christianity. There's nowhere on it where you can find this is a faith-led show. But because I'm a believer and I just naturally storytell and I just naturally kind of share who I am, that maybe I pray or maybe God spoke to me in this way, people will message me, inbox me, DM me. And I'm having conversations, bringing people to Jesus when I had no idea that was going to be the outcome. So I think we can't even see the impact that we have, because how many other people have listened to one of these hundreds of different people who started shows and maybe not even said anything? I think it's so far reaching that we will only know on the other side of heaven.
I love what C.S. Lewis said. He said, we don't need more Christian books. We need more books written by Christians on other subjects. And I think it's the same with podcasting, right? We don't need more Christian podcasts. We need more Christians making podcasts.
That's right.
And being a voice in the conversations that are going on out in the culture. And I mean, helping in the way that you help people to tap into that message, that calling that God has given to them, the conversation that God has called them to be a voice in, that in and of itself is disciple making. I think a lot of times we restrict disciple making to, well, that's when you first introduce somebody to the gospel. That's called evangelism. Disciple making is the rest of it. It's a long obedience in the same direction, like Eugene Peterson calls it. And where is that journey happening? It's happening 9 to 5. A lot of it. Certainly, it's happening in our families and when we go to church on Sundays. But primarily, it's in that 9 to 5 window. And so that's discipleship. Is there a certain favorite student or story that you have of one of your success stories that you could share with? You've already shared and alluded to several of them.
One that pops into my mind. So when I very first got started in teaching people kind of the clarity coaching and the podcasting, I had a girl come to me. Her name was Chelsea. And she won a free 15-minute call with me through some, thing that we did. And so I remember I wouldn't even have Zoom yet. I'm like, let's do a phone call. So we did this phone call and she's telling me all these things. Like, she used to be a wedding planner, and she went through a traumatic, tumultuous divorce, was a single mom, ends up getting remarried. She's a sign language interpreter. Like, what can she do? And I said to her, well, what is the thing that everybody comes to you for that you think is just easy, that everyone else should do? And she said, systems. I can systemize anything, like your home, your kitchen, any of these pieces. And I said, cool. Well, your podcast will be called Systemize Your Life, and you're going to help women get organized in their home. That's where we started. It was in their home and their families. And she said, okay. And she was such a fantastic student because she just did everything I said. Those are far and few between, right? So she ends up starting this show, Darren, and it didn't work. It didn't work very well. It was like slow. It wasn't really working, but she continued to stay faithful and committed to it. And I kept telling her 90% of podcasters quit. Just stay faithful to the vision God's given you. And so she kept doing it. By her second year, all of a sudden, this podcast just grew some legs. It started getting found. She started getting more clear, more confident. Her show skyrocketed way past my show. By the third year, this woman is in the top 10 of all of the parenting across the entire podcasting platform. She retires not only herself out of sign language interpretation, but also retires her husband out of being in the fire department. She's able to start homeschooling her daughter, and her entire life completely shifts. And now she just gets to volunteer and sign language interpret at church. And they get to tithe, and they get to give, and they get to invest and create legacy for her family. And it's just so incredible to see. And of course, like, all the women who she helps, they're now sound of mind in their home. They have a proper order when it comes to their faith, their marriage, their children, their home, their business. She's expanded into business organization as well, where now they're also having big outcome because they're organized, they're systemized, they have an operating system. And so all the way from this just humble beginning 5 years ago of saying, I have no idea what I'm called to do, but I'm willing to ask, I'm willing to seek, and then I'm willing to be obedient and see it all the way through. The first year looking like nothing's working, which is typical. And then trusting that God will do exceedingly more with so much less than we ever dreamed possible for ourselves and our businesses. And just being able to see her success today, more so in her heart and the way that she shows up in her life and her work, could be the best reward ever. Of course, the financial outcome is wonderful too. But I think being able to see somebody with peace and fulfillment in their life, that is almost, you can't put words to it. I think that peace and fulfillment, knowing you're doing the will of God in your work, is the greatest outcome that we can all ever hope for. And she definitely got that.
Yeah. Wow. So for those who maybe have been at it for a little while in podcasting, I think I've been doing this now for 10 years. What is typically your advice on how to level up a podcast?
Yeah. Oh, that's fun. That's a tactical one for sure. And I want it, 1 Samuel 15:22 pops to mind, which is, true success is obedience, even when it looks smaller in the world's eyes. So the biggest thing is, like, being at it for so many years, it's just obedience. It's continual commitment. It's knowing that God's timeline's always perfect, and it doesn't always fit our timeline. It almost never does. Because if you look at me, people might say, oh, well, you made it. You're an overnight success. Well, it took 16 years to get here. That took really hard things that I had to do to become the woman that could steward this business. And I think we first have to recognize, like, I'm going to be in this with God if it takes the rest of my life, because that's what my life is for, is to be in this with God. Now, those that have chosen podcasting as their outlet, I'm so excited for you, because I think we've finally discovered, it's not about what the world says, because the world says you want virality, you want clicks, you want likes, which lead us to the wrong platforms, in my opinion. The platforms that steal from our time, that steal from our joy, that perpetuate addiction in our life because our brains are so malleable. The more we use our phone, click, swipe, post, the more we have to continue to feed that beast. Well, the world's saying that's how you grow a business. That's how you sell a product. That's how you reach people. But if we actually stop and back away slowly and start asking the questions like, what is the data telling me? Is this actually growing the business? Are my leads actually coming from my diligent efforts of posting on TikTok or Instagram or wherever it is? For me, the answer was no. And so then I started asking, maybe it's the thing that doesn't make any sense when it comes to the world's perspective. A podcast makes no sense. There's no virality. You have to be at it for a year, 2 years to start ranking into those top tiers of your category. You have no idea if people are liking it. So you're on this blind faith journey, but the podcast has longevity. Now we have this long vision of I'm going to spend a few hours a week building a library of content that's perfect for my ideal person to listen to. I'll be strategic. I'll use keywords. I'll title it correctly so people can find it. But I'm going to trust that process. And what that does is it gives you back time and freedom to go and be the visionary again, right? To be able to do more PR or get on more other podcasts, things like that. But trusting the process that this thing that the only metric we have is downloads. And for me, downloads did not sync up with revenue at all. So that even wasn't a great indication of like, is this thing working? And you're trusting this long form tool to get you where God's trying to get you. And I think that's just a big piece of inventorying all the things you're doing to answer the question, inventorying all the things you're doing in your business and getting rid of some of it. That's often the answer. It's I'm doing all this stuff, but why? Mm-hmm. Which fires are actually lit? Pouring fuel on that and letting go of the ones that aren't lighting fire, right? And if it's podcasting, really being strategic with the podcast because it is the front of funnel. So those of you interested in using podcasting, you title it really clearly because people can search for the name and find you. You are clear with your content plan. What does your person actually look up? What is their number one problem? Why do they want your product? And you build content consistently week over week over week, solving that same problem over and over again until, right? I'm 8 years later, still talking about we should start a podcast still. And that is really going to help you get seen. And then the other thing is really being committed to making sure that you're in it for the long haul, right? I think that 90% of podcasters quit. And so if you can commit to maybe this thing that doesn't at first feel good, but see it all the way through, right? Run the race. You're going to eventually be one of the last men or women standing in your category because everyone else quits since it doesn't feel good.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think what the average podcast lasts, 7 episodes, I think last I heard something.
10.
Yeah, something like that. So it's probably more than 90% that quit.
Yep.
Right. Because it is hard to just stay consistent. But I mean, to have a tribe like what your students have, I assume that's part of what you offer is just that support, those cheerleaders to say, we're all in this together. They can kind of swap ideas. Is that what's going on?
Yeah. So yes, I have definitely built quite a big network of students where they all can collaborate too, which is really great benefit. Because the podcasting community, believe it or not, is actually pretty small, like the people who actually stick it out. And so people get to know everyone really in your category. And so doing podcast interviews with each other helps grow that visibility. Being able also to continue with market research and listen to the people who listen to your show and ask questions like, what are you looking up right now? What's going on in your life seasonally that's keeping you from blank? Why haven't you had success with blank? And bringing all that market research into your podcast also helps it be fresh and exciting for you. And then I think once people start seeing results from their podcast, it's like this big infusion of this is working, right? And so for some of my students like Chelsea, that was over a year before she started seeing sales coming in from the show. But then it was this exponential burst. But for Teresa, for example, the grief mentor, she started seeing sales immediately. And so it is God's timeline and when you're ready for those floodgates to burst. But I think being faithful with this podcast, it allows people to trust you over time. And there is no way that we can have clients or buyers of our product or people even that listen to our ministry if they do not like us, trust us, and have an outcome from something free that we offer. And that podcast allows three birds, one stone. Like they come to the show, they can like you, connect with you, have a big outcome, and decide if you're the person or the product that they want to work with or purchase. And it becomes a conversion tool. And I think that's a whole nother level of seeing possibility as business owners that keeps you excited to keep podcasting.
So podcasting has been around for quite a while. I know a lot of people I talk to still have not listened to a podcast still.
Yeah.
But does it seem like, and maybe they're just not the type that really consume much content aside from Netflix or, something like that.
Right.
I mean, is podcasting on the decline or is it on the rise? How is it changing at this point in history?
That's a great question. So it was definitely, we saw a big boom with COVID of people starting podcasts and starting a business in general, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we've kind of seen that whole bubble, I think, burst because reality came back. Most people went back to work or gave up on podcasting because over 90% will quit simply because it's not a feel-good platform. There just is no validation that really comes from it. So you have to trust yourself and you have to continue to get better at it kind of on your own. But what we have seen now is a pendulum swing back to podcasting being really powerful, more podcasts, but more importantly, more listeners. So what's happened is, I think, at least this is my interpretation of these metrics, is that we're sick of our phone, sick of the visual stimulation. I'm so tired of it. When I find myself yet again on something, clicking a thing, I'm like, why? Like it drains me immediately. Now I just have like this mental overload that I'm carrying all day. And I just crave silence and listening. So audio consumption is drastically increasing. People don't want visual stimulation. We just so over it. So listenership has greatly increased, which means it's such great news for people who started or are starting now to get their foot in the door and kind of position themselves as this expert or this encourager in this particular space. And I will say something else to this that I think is so interesting. The typical demographic of people that listen to podcasts, they are professional, they are middle income or higher. They often care about their health, their family. They're taking kids to extracurriculars. They're working out, bettering their body. They're cleaning their home, doing laundry. They're a particular kind of person who isn't actually numbing out.
Yeah.
But they're wanting to learn, to grow, to be challenged, to be stretched. And that's the kind of person that also takes action on buying something from you, working with you, listening to you, coaching with you, collaborating with you. And that's the kind of audience I want to be in front of as well. So it's all good news.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, we have I think around 230 books that we've now published through Highbridge Books. And It's interesting to see that audiobook sales are starting to outpace our ebook sales.
Yes.
For most of our books. Yeah.
It's that audio consumption. It's like it allows us to turn off and our brain, but without the numb out effect that's so draining.
Right.
Yeah. I know for me personally, I've been craving that too.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's also, the podcasting superstars out there like Joe Rogan that have pioneered this long form and just to say popularized the long form show to where people are actually willing to, even if they don't get it all in one sitting, they enjoy being able to sit or while they're vacuuming or mowing the lawn or whatever, to be able to flesh out some ideas instead of just having to get the quick sound bites and everything is right sized for commercial breaks. And,
that's so true. Yeah, even the really long form, like not even just
Yeah.
long form, like it used to be 20 minutes, a 30-minute episode. Some of those really long pieces of content are even more consumed, which is
Yeah.
proving the point of this pendulum swing back to I want authenticity. We're tired of the quick, the short form. We're tired of the over curation and the filters and all the here's your answer. I think it was cute for a minute until we realized that it wasn't actually going to help us with anything. And everyone always comes back to me, right? Self-focused. I have a problem. I need to solve it.
Yeah.
And we've realized that the short form isn't doing the job. And so we're getting back to boots on the ground, bettering ourselves, listening to the content that's going to get us where we need to go. And I think that's just so much opportunity for the podcasting space.
Yes. So StefanieGass.com is the website, and that's Stephanie with the F, not a PH, and two S's on gas, StefanieGass.com. Stephanie, what do you want to say about how people can hear more from you?
Yeah. So thanks for shouting out the website, Darren. That's a great place for you guys to go. And it's kind of the hub. I have the podcast link over there. I also have a gift for your listeners, Darren, if they're interested in coming and learning more about how podcasting partners with building and growing a business that's aligned with God. So everything that I teach is we have to be founded in God's word, biblically sound, and growing a business with him as our CEO. I have a boot camp that I put together. It's 5 days, and it goes through the method of building a podcast, monetizing that podcast, and then scaling in a way that all serves his kingdom. And you guys can get that at StephanieGass.com/bootcamp and use the code Darren, Darren, and we'll give it to you for free. And hopefully that'll bless you.
Awesome. We'll have that in the episode notes for this episode. Stephanie, thank you so much for spending time with us and for coaching us today. We're all better for it.
Oh, thank you so much, Darren, for having me.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Christian Business Leader Podcast. Be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and tune in for the next episode as we continue exploring God's will and ways for business.